Today we're going to talk about ethical practices for clientele advocacy for behavioral interventions. Problem behavior reduction occurs in multiple settings. The prevalence of problem behavior occurs in schools. Also, we're going to talk about the ease of obtaining prescription for anxiety and depression, and then alternative motives that people may have to reduce their own problem behavior, or that teachers or direct care staff may have to implement people's prescribed medications. So the history, there are many laws and acts that have been implemented by the FDA to control drug administration. The first one was the Biological Control Act. That was put into place by Dr. Wally, and he was appointed by Congress to conduct a study that measured the effects of chemical preservatives and colors that had on food and drug consumption. The point of this was to ensure that the drugs that are being administered were free of preservatives. The second was the U.S. v. Johnson Act. This act entailed not to use false therapeutic claims about certain drugs and to only advertise the facts. And then following that was the Shirley Amendment, and that was also related to using false labeling and to allude to therapeutic effectiveness when that just wasn't the case. Okay, a few more acts to consider are the Harrison Act, Narcotic Act, the 1945 Penicillin Act, and the Durham-Humphrey Act Amendment. The only one we're going to talk about is the 1945 Penicillin Act. This one was extremely important because it required people to testing for every single penicillin before it was administered to the public. And you would think like something like this would already happen, but it wasn't until this act was instilled that it did occur. And then later down the road, this same ideal was mandated for any other type of drug. So, John F. Kennedy famously said, people have the right to safety, right to be informed, right to choose, and right to be heard. So with that, it's pretty much, says it for us. As consumers, we have the right to know the side effects of the drugs we are consuming. So that required drugs, pharmacies and pharmaceutical companies to label the side effects and the possible altercations and the ingredients for certain drugs. And the Belmont Report, we talked about this in 509. This is just to ensure that as behavior analysts, we also follow ethical guidelines in relation to our field when dealing with human participants. Okay, so why is this all related to why is this all related to ethics? Well, because we want to ensure that if our clients are being prescribed medications, we know the possible side effects that can occur, and we know the steps to take to properly advocate for those because of those side effects. So the first research I'm going to talk about is the anatomy of the epidemic. In 2007, the disability rate was 1 in every 76 Americans were on SSSI, and then that more than doubled in 1987, and then that was 6 times the rate in 1955. So as you can see, the numbers jumped drastically from 1987 to 2007. Okay, next, this is related to the I can't say this word, Kalachik article. This discussed adults with developmental disabilities and how they have been a victim of polypharmacy for decades. In the years to come, the retard may claim an all-time record of having the greatest variety and largest tonnage of chemical agents shoveled into them. This is just important to note because it is entirely true that adults with developmental disabilities happen more times than not to be in adult homes, and they have a lengthy list of medications, and it's important for us as behavior analysts to be wary of those lists and possible side effects, and also just be knowledgeable of these drugs. Okay, so then I'm not going to get into every single do's and don'ts that Kalachik ethical that he provided. Okay, But with these ethical tips that he laid out for us can be applicable for multiple settings. Like, this is not just for psychotropic medications. This could be for kids on Ritalin, kids on anybody is applicable for. Okay. All right, and then next, there's a literature review of effective ADHD medication. This reviewed the past 15 years of effective ADHD medication. The first step, they categorize in the treatment into 3 categories: stimulants, non-stimulants, and behavioral therapy. And they measure the efficacy of the treatment, and then compare the treatments. So after comparing 15 years of research, the literature found that behavioral therapy is a comparable intervention to medication. So with that in mind, it's extremely important to know that and advocate for that when dealing with a young kid and their first jump is to push for meds. As behavior analysts, yes, we don't want to step outside of our scope of practice, but if there is literature and research to back it up, that is more than professional and okay. Just be like, you know what, let's just take a step back and see what other options are before implementing a drug. So, in conclusion, it's very important to be aware of the rising diagnosis of mental illness. Just because there are more and more diagnoses doesn't necessarily mean that we should assume the function or that they're always accurate, because the numbers are increasing so high, so we just want to be cautious. And then also always advocate for behavior interventions if possible before people push meds. And then finally, if one of your clients is on psychotropic medication, to accurately and efficiently measure the target behavior while they're on that medication. So that way people can see the possible side effects that are occurring. All right, guys, thanks.